Hi, my name is Katharine, and I want to give you some tips for kids with dyslexia and ADHD that are really having a hard time with reading and remembering letters, consonants, or blending sounds. So I just made a video on building the foundation of how to teach reading. Take a look at that because that is based on a lot of students that I work with that do have dyslexia or ADHD. Sometimes those come together. However, with some students, even the tips that I just gave in that last video may still be too hard or confusing for them. So I want to share with you what has worked with a lot of students. These are out of the box ideas. They are not things that you will see everywhere else because I've done the research of trying everything, noticing they don't work, and pivoting and trying to put myself in the shoes of that child and figuring out what do they see and what is going on in their brain that they need that support and how can I do that. So let me share with you, and then you feel free to try these out with your kids. Adapt them, please, because I don't know your child and you might be able to come up with an even creative idea than I have. The first very common set of letters that are really confusing for kids with dyslexia is P, B, D, and Q. The reason why is they all have, this is what the students tell me, they all have a stick and a round ball. And they all are looking really similar for them because for kids with dyslexia, it's like if I were to flip my Play-Doh upside down and up, you would still know that it's Play-Doh. Well, when they see letters, they're such amazing flexible thinkers. They can always flip them back and forth and see them as any other letter. So they're really amazing flexible thinkers, but that also means that reading alphabet letters like P, B, D, and Q are very confusing. What I do is instead of taking those cookie cutter prepackaged letters, I have them build their own cards. So here's a great example. I have a student who and D look the same, right? And I said, can you draw something that will represent those different for you? If you notice it closely, they look like the same dog, doesn't it? But for this child, they're very artistic. Every time they see this picture, they know it's a P. It stands for my dog, Pingo. And it's looking like Pingo is stealing a wallet from somebody because he's a really creative kid. And that's how he remembers this is P for Pingo. But this one is D for dog because it's a dog without the wallet. It's the smallest difference in my brain, but for him, he sees these as so different that he can remember the letters. You just sometimes have to take away the cookie cutter box set of letters and have the student have their brain create the letters in a way that makes sense for them. So that's been really helpful for this student. For another student, I asked them, what are the letters that are really confusing for you? We draw a line and we almost play like a versus, T versus X. These were the two that were confusing for this child. And so I said, can you turn them into totally two different things by drawing it? And so she was able to draw a T for a tree, an X for a fox. And then when you do that in her brain, she sees them finally as two different things. It doesn't rotate in her head. So she did it again with, she said Q and A look similar. And I was like, well, that does make sense, right? Because they both have a circle, they both have a stick on the right side, one's just longer. So she was able to make a quail and an apple to stand out. And she drew it, I learned from her, so then I drew my own version too. This is very helpful for kids instead of looking at flashcards because it's teaching their brain how to see them differently. Okay, that's with consonants and vowels. If your child or student is having a hard time blending, here are the two ways I found that to be helpful. One of them I talked about in my first video, which is sound balls. It's because we are attaching sounds to a tactile experience of squeezing them. So if we were to do, oops, I just lost my sound ball, hold on. Like this. We would have a vowel in the middle, a consonant, and a consonant. We would have sound balls or Play-Doh or kinetic sand that they would make. So they're really highly engaged. We're not doing a worksheet where there's too many letters and words. It's just very clear. I use a tray to make it stand out. I use the vowels as a different color so it makes it stand out. And they've already learned in my last video the hand gestures for the vowels. If you haven't seen that yet, take a look at that. Then they would ah, p. That was smashing. And then they would squeeze the Play-Dohs together to make one big loaf of bread, map, and they would squeeze it all together. and that helps them a lot. We do this even when they have 4-letter words. Then when we bring in digraphs where it's 2 letters that make one sound ball, they understand it because it's tactile, and they're really experiencing that by putting their memory into a Play-Doh and squeezing it, rather than just having to remember everything in their brain abstractly blended together in their heads. So let's say that doesn't work. Some students with dyslexia or ADHD have memory retrieval challenges where it's really hard for them to remember one letter, then another letter, and like remember the sound and blend it together. It's just so much. So I've tried a lot of different ways, and this one seems to work. I make paper, it's kind of like a worksheet, but it's like clearly much more simplified. So I will make a sheet of paper that just has the first 2 letters of a CVC or a 3-letter word, like mop, right? And I did it for all of them. I have the same vowel, and I teach them to keep their mouth open, and they go ma, they go ta, ka, and then ha. And then I say, okay, now I want you to add the p sound to all of them. Keep your mouth open and then close it when you add that last letter. So they go ha, p, or ma, p. And then all they have to do is close their mouth for that last letter. For some reason, this is a little bit lower of a lift than them having to remember this sound, this sound, this sound, and then blend it together. I don't have a name for this right now, but I wanted to give you this strategy in case nothing else is working. I love that the vowel part, I'm having them keep their mouths open and then they close it, ha, p, at the end. I hope these are helpful. Do you have other dyslexia strategies and tips that you haven't seen anywhere, but they work for your child and your student? I would love to know them so then I can give it a try for my kids, because at the end of the day, we're doing work to help kids feel confident through reading and writing, and it doesn't matter if it's not written in a program. For me, it matters that that child feels confident and feels like they belong and they fit in, because we're not saying like, oh, nothing's working for you. I'm determined to figure out what works for that child so that they can feel really good about themselves. Please subscribe to this channel or follow me on Instagram and Facebook for more tips. And thanks for listening. Hope this helps. Bye.